One of the things that makes me immensely excited for the future of DC movies is the fact that DC and Warner Brothers have decided they really want to lean in and embrace the multiverse within their storytelling and film creation, which allows them to, one, not only make a variety of new interesting worlds and continuities with their amazing characters, but also bring in a bunch of creative directors and visionaries that can do their own thing within their own little worlds, and they don't all have to follow the same, single continuity similar to like the DCEU. And that's not at all to rag on the combined universe that have become so common, especially within the superhero worlds, especially like the MCU. They do it wonderfully, but I do think that when a director is allowed to do their own thing, it gives them far more potential in creative storytelling and just honestly makes it feel a lot more unique. And one of those prime examples, in my opinion, is the upcoming Matt Reeves Batman, which is scheduled for release in March 2022, and of course is starring Robert Pattinson as the brand new Dark Knight. I don't know if I've ever been this excited for a movie. The trailer at DC Fandom is still one of my favorite trailers I think I have ever seen, and any details we get from the film have just made me immensely more excited to see what they are going to be doing with that universe. And in this video, I want to do something fun and talk about how I would build out the Batman universe, which seems like WB is really going to be leaning into. As we know, we're getting the Batman film as well as most likely a sequel film, which hasn't been 100% confirmed yet, but rumblings are that there's going to be plenty of films built out and it's going to be at least a trilogy, as well as we know we are going to be getting exclusive shows to HBO Max like Gotham PD, Penguin, and even possibly a Catwoman show, as well as a variety of other rumored projects that, of course, none of these are 100% confirmed besides the Batman film as well as the Gotham PD, but I thought about taking my stab at it and deciding how I would build out the Batman universe on HBO Max and in theaters. A couple of caveats before we go too far into this. I do want to say a spoiler warning, just because when I'm talking about building out this Batman world, I'm going to be making some guesses at what's going to happen in the first Batman film, so if you don't really want that spoiled, I obviously have no idea what's going to happen in the film. I have no insider information or anything like that, but I am going to be taking my best stab at trying to guess what the film is going to be about. That does mean taking in some rumors into account as I make my guess, as well as this is just going to be centered around Batman and the Batman related characters. I'm not saying there's not going to be a larger DC universe built, even though I think Matt Reeves really wants to focus just on like Bat family characters and Batman villains. There are some rumors that a Superman and Wonder Woman are teased and kind of set up in this world, but I'm not going to be talking about a Justice League movie or anything like that, because I still don't know what they're doing with the actual DCEU, which is going to be heavily changed after the Flash movie coming out in 2022, so that's just probably going to stay in the DCEU continuity, not in this Batman world. This is just focused on Batman. And finally, in the comments down below, I want to see what you guys would do to build out this Batman universe. I want to see what movies and shows you would love to see, as well as if you're new to the channel and enjoy the Batman related content, please make sure to subscribe, as well as leave a like if you enjoyed. It shows that you do want to see more of this Batman content, and I would definitely love to make more of it. But without further ado, let's get into it. Now, first off, I want to start with the GCPD show, which is going to HBO Max, and I know this isn't the first thing that is going to be released to us, but within the timeline of this universe, it is actually the first thing in chronological order. We know that the GCPD show is going to be taking place as year one, where Batman is just first setting out. He's in his first year and still is that myth, and then that builds into the Batman film coming out in March, which is about year 1.5, year 2 more, where Batman's still a myth. He's still, not really known to the public, but he does have some sort of a relationship with the police, which has been shown within the trailer, where Batman's literally walking onto the crime scene, and he probably already has an established relationship with Jim Gordon, which we will see kind of formed in the GCPD show, because Jim Gordon is going to be the main character. Now, I don't know specifically what they're going to tackle within this show. I know corruption within the police department and corruption as a whole seems to be the overall theme that this Batman universe is really going to go dive deep into, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But I do think this would be a great avenue to not only set up that relationship between Batman and Jim Gordon, which it's rumored that Robert Pattinson will be showing up in this show, probably not in a whole lot, more than 5 scenes or something like that, but establishing that relationship, as well as establishing some background to probably the crime families within Gotham, like Carmine Falcone, who we know is going to be in the Batman, maybe even the Penguin, and also just setting up other random villain origins would be really cool as well. Maybe something like Firefly, Killer Moth, I don't know, just set up something, and I think there's a lot of potential with that, especially being on HBO Max. And next up, of course, is the Batman film coming out March 4th, 2022, and I'm going to say spoiler warning again, even though it's not a spoiler warning. I have no idea what's going to happen happen in the film. I guess this is how I would build out the Batman trilogy and what I would hope they focus on. Of course, they may do something completely different and it'll still be amazing, but as we know in the Batman film, this is in year 1.5 of Bruce Wayne being Batman. He's going to be really becoming that world's greatest detective, as well as going toe-to-toe with the Riddler. And Riddler, of course, is not the only villain that is going to be present in this film. We know Penguin is going to be in it, we know that Carmine Falcone is going to be in it, and depending on how you view Catwoman, she is also going to be playing an integral role within the film. There are other villains rumored, but as of right now, let's just look at that cast of characters. Now, first up, starting with Catwoman, I don't believe she's going to be a true villain within this film. I think she's going to be walking that line of if you can trust her or can you not trust her, and Batman is going to have to find a way to navigate that. Now, looking more at Penguin and Carmine Falcone, I think we have a lot more information as to what they are going to be doing within the film. First off, Carmine Falcone is the big crime boss within Gotham, and it seems like Penguin may be a subservient to him and one of his, not henchmen, but one of his quote-unquote generals, or whatever term you want to throw in there. I'm blanking on the correct term. We do know, though, that Penguin isn't the established Penguin that you would assume he is. He's not the huge crime boss. He is actually just Oswald Cobblepot, and Penguin is a name that, thugs and people will call him. That actually really pisses him off, and I'm sure we're going to see him embrace that more within the film and also within his own show, which is being rumored, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And I think that's also a lot of potential there, and in this film, we may see him start to kind of really crave power and slowly plot on how he may take out Carmine Falcone. And for all we know, he may be behind the Riddler and trying to kill all these political figures so he can gain more power within the Gotham political system. But I do suspect that a lot of this trilogy, and if I had to pick an overarching villain that is going to be set up within this trilogy and within this movie, it is going to be the Court of Owls. And that's kind of how I'm going to be setting up this Batman trilogy. I'll talk more about the second and third films in a little bit. But first off, let's just conclude that at the end of the Batman film, he defeats the Riddler, becomes the world's greatest detective, and he learns about, all of this corruption running rampant within Gotham, which he was aware about, maybe not fully aware, and also his family is somewhat involved within that, and that's something he has to battle in future films. And there's either a little tease, maybe a post-credit setting up the Court of Owls, showing a organization running all this crime and how they've been so influential within Gotham for so many years. And another end credit scene that I would love to see, even more so than setting up the Court of Owls, which I think you could also just save for a later date. You could just slightly tease them within the film and fully dive into them in the second and third films. But I really want to see Robin set up within this universe, and it's been heavily rumored that Matt Reeves also wants to have a Robin within this universe. Now, I'm not saying you have to show Dick Grayson, watching his parents get murdered. Just set up something where we know that relationship has been set up and that Robin is coming to that universe, who I think is integral to a Bat family / Batman world if you're going to be, really diving deep into this. But then after the first film, I do think this is when, in our own timeline, GCPD is going to release, as well as we're going to be getting a couple of HBO Max shows kind of in between what would be the first Batman movie and the second one, those being Catwoman and Penguin, which are both rumored to be coming to HBO Max, not confirmed. Now, when talking about Catwoman and Penguin, there is no details about these shows whatsoever, so I'm going to be making some guesses, but I do think they both would fit well in between the first and second films. Catwoman detailing what she's doing in between the first and second films, maybe detailing some of her crimes, maybe what she's going up against, and possibly what she's running away from, as well as the Penguin show. I think would do really well to focus on Oswald Cobblepot really turning into the Penguin, becoming that crime boss. And there's some rumors suggesting that it's going to be a Scarface-like show, which, of course, if you've seen Scarface, I like the premise a lot. I don't know how it's going to work, but I would love to see it. Another show that has been rumored to be coming to HBO Max set within this Batman universe that I do want to talk about is a Deathstroke show. Now, this won't be featuring Joe Manganiello. The rumor is it's going to be a completely different actor, and something may change. Joe Manganiello may be able to play Deathstroke within the film because he was in 2 scenes. But regardless, I think Deathstroke is a great character to add into this world. He doesn't really change my overall story for this world or a whole lot until later on, which I will talk about, where he's going to feature in another project. That's why I think it'd pay dividends to set him up now. He'd just be a great character, and I think there's a lot of potential for a darker rated HBO Max style show surrounding Deathstroke. You could do a lot where him maybe taking out contracts, just setting up his origin, and I think could be a lot of fun. And one last caveat about the Deathstroke show, it doesn't have to take place between the first and second movie within this overall timeline. It could truthfully go anywhere. It's not going to really affect Batman all that much, and I don't think Batman is going to be a central figure within it. Yeah, you may get an end credit to the show or the last scene of the Deathstroke show where he gets offered a contract to go and kill Batman, but that would be about it. That can kind of fit anywhere within the timeline. But this is where we get to the second movie on the timeline, and I do think there's going to be somewhat of a time jump between 1 and 2. Nothing crazy, but I do want Robin already established, and that, of course, is going to be Dick Grayson. I don't need to see a whole lot. I hope it's similar to how they set up Batman within, this universe where it's year 1.5. You don't need to see the origin story. Maybe we have some flashbacks showing some integral scenes about, him becoming Robin, but that's about it. The main villain I do want within this film is going to be Mr. Freeze, another character who I think has massive potential as a Batman villain. Just look at Batman the animated series, for God's sake, and I think definitely needs to be redeemed. Now, I'm not only saying Mr. Freeze because he's a character I really do love, but GothCorp has also already been set up within this Batman universe. We have seen via set photos, there have been posters about tear down GothCorp and a variety of likes confirming it's within that universe, and you could also tie that into corruption, trying to play that into the overall role of, how is GothCorp possibly corrupted, and, how that set up Mr. Freeze's origins per se, and also involving his wife Nora, where I'm not saying they have to rip off like the Batman the animated series origin, which is something that I still genuinely think is one of the best villains that you could ever set up, but Mr. Freeze would be the main central villain of this film, and you could bring back characters like Penguin and Catwoman to also play their roles within the film, and maybe Oswald Cobblepot has finally become the Penguin, taking out Carmine Falcone within his own show and setting up the future and teasing. This is where you would definitely have to set up the Court of Owls, where they are going to be the villain of the third film. And in terms of end credits, I definitely think this is where you should set up maybe a Talon, as well as I know a lot of people are suggesting that Matt Reeves is going to throw the Joker into one of these films, but the Joker would not be in any of my first 3 films within this Batman trilogy, besides maybe an end credit in the second or third film, or maybe his origin is set up in the GCPD show, which I know would probably not work very well, because if you set a villain up, typically a lot of people are going to be wanting them in the next film. But look at Thanos, he was teased for like a decade, so you could set up the Joker and show maybe his origin, him falling into the vat of acid as an end credit scene for the second film, showing that he's coming in the future, but for me, he would not be in that third film. Now, when it comes to the gap between the second and third movies, this is going to be just me throwing out show suggestions where I don't necessarily know 100% how they would fit, but these are characters that I think could hold their own in a DC show, and I would definitely love to see it. The top 3 that come to mind and could possibly fit within this time slot as new characters at least would be Batgirl, Bane, and Deadshot, and I do think a GCPD or a Catwoman Season 2 could make a lot of sense in this little time frame. Now, when we get to the third film, I do think this is going to heavily focus on the Court of Owls, and they would be the main villains, along with the Talons, of course, which are just kind of the body and muscle for the Court of Owls, and this would be the resolvement of that problem, or at least, you're not going to get rid of the Court of Owls or the corruption at all within Gotham, but just the resolvement for that storyline, and would be the ending of this trilogy. And not only would the third movie be the resolvement of the Court of Owls and a lot of the corruption surrounding maybe the Wayne family, which I think will be set up within the first film, but I do think this is the film where Dick Grayson moves away from the role of Robin at the end and decides he wants to go off on his own. It's hard to build out the Bat family past anything beyond that if Dick Grayson is going to stay as Robin, and I do think this would set up a Nightwing movie, which has been in production hell at WB for a decade now. Obviously, they would have to completely rewrite the movie to fit within this Batman universe, but a Nightwing film is something I definitely want to see, and I will talk about in a minute. Now, when it comes to the end credit of the third Batman film, I have 2, one of which I'm going to be talking about 2 variations, and then a different end credit scene that'll set up something else, but this is basing it off that we are going to be getting a 4th film, which 90% of this is based off of random stuff that probably won't happen, so let's just jump down the rabbit hole and assume we maybe get a 4th film. The first end credit scene would be Batman meeting with the Justice League, or setting up the Justice League in some way that we know that larger DC universe that has been teased previously is still there. I'm not saying we're going to see a Superman, we're going to see a Wonder Woman, but just, seeing that Batman is mingling with the Justice League, I think would be pretty cool, as well as the last end credit scene would set up a villain for the fourth film. Now, I think it would be Joker because, like I said previously, Joker has already been teased in this world, and it really does seem like Matt Reeves wants to do a Joker movie, or, you know, a Joker versus Batman film, and I think it would make sense to be like the fourth film to do that. But alternatively, if he didn't want to do the Joker, I think Hush would be a really cool villain to set up in this universe. He is a newer villain, of course, to comics, and he hasn't had his chance on the big screen yet, and a lot of people don't even know really probably who he is if you're talking about a general audience that doesn't read comic books or play video games. So I think there's a lot of potential to do a, you know, whatever you want with him, and that's probably what I would prefer. But like I said previously, Joker's already kind of established in my world already. And the next project in the timeline after the third Batman film for me would be a Nightwing movie, or I suppose it could be a show. Now, this would delve deep into Dick Grayson becoming Nightwing, and the main villain would be Deathstroke, who we know is already previously established in this world, and I think would add for a very great movie. I think those two could definitely hold their own. Obviously, it's been proven that any hero, as long as it's a good movie, could make, you know, plenty of money at the box office. I think there's benefits to making it a show, but I think it would work better off a movie and would build off of the success of the Batman universe that is already established. And finally, of course, we'd be getting the fourth Batman film, which would finally be Batman versus Joker and be the final film within this universe, or at least that's where I'm going to end it for this video, because this film would probably be taking place around 2033 or something like that, and there's no idea as of right now how successful this universe would be and how long Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson plan on building out this world. I've heard some crazy rumors spanning from Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves hate each other, don't want to do a second film, and also a rumor that Robert Pattinson would love to play Batman for as long as he can because he loves the character, and he actually wants to take one of the leading production roles within the universe and help Matt Reeves build this out. So who knows, but if this video goes crazy and gets something crazy like 1,000 likes like I've had on another previous Batman video, then I'll make a part 2 and build out a crazy universe. That probably will never happen, but hell, I'd have a great time talking about it. And again, if you made it this long into the video, thank you so much for watching. I hope you were entering what you would want to see as your Batman universe. I can't wait to read your comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in another video.